I know that guitar players are picky about their picks. Did I really just say that? Hello again, everyone. Welcome to The Guitar Foster Parent. I'm John McLain. Welcome to our latest episode featuring the Harmony 2814 project guitar that we've been working on for some time now on the channel. And we are going to address these frets today that are grooved out. We're going to get to that. It's been quite a process getting to hitting record on this video. I'll outline some of that process that's been going on the past few weeks off camera. And how we finally are ready, I think, to tackle this and get these frets back in fighting shape. And we'll also talk about briefly why I felt like it needed to be done. But first, some housekeeping. Welcome to the channel. If you're new and you're not sure what's going on, who is this guy and why is he messing with this old guitar, I would encourage you to look at our trailer video. If you'll watch that video, I explain in great detail why I do this, what inspired this channel, and what our mission is. Basically, we're taking unwanted instruments, fixing them up, and putting them into forever homes. We're fostering them and donating them into the hands of someone that instead of sitting this in the closet or using it to hang their laundry on or what have you, they're going to play the thing and make music with it. That's our mission. So that video will explain that. But look, you may just like guitars. You may like tinkering with stuff. You may be trying to learn how to do frets, and so that's how you found us. However you found us, I'm thrilled to make your acquaintance. Welcome to the show. It's great to have you along. And of course, welcome to our longtime viewers. And we're so happy to have everybody here at the Guitar Foster Parent. A couple of housekeeping things before we get started with our guitar work today. I want to remind you about the YouTube algorithm. I want to spread this mission far and wide. You know, every YouTube channel wants to grow, I think. I certainly would like this one to grow. So if you will do 3 things for me, I would appreciate it. If you'll like this video, which is as simple as clicking the thumb and the thumb up one down below, that will help. The lower right-hand corner, you'll see a little red YouTube play sign, a subscribe button. Click that and subscribe to the channel. And then if you'll click the notification bell, then those 3 things will tell YouTube that you think this video is great, this channel is great, and that they should maybe share this with other people. That will help us grow. So if you will do those things, I will appreciate it. And remember, look, I know he's like, well, last thing I need is more notifications. I get it. I am not going to spam you. I'm not going to bombard you. I'm not going to sit there and ask you for money constantly. I'm not going to, we only do a video every 2 weeks, if that, on the Guitar Foster Parent. So it's really, it's just a simple few clicks for you. And I promise that I will respect your privacy. And I'm not going to bomb you with stuff like a lot of people do, and you give them their email address and then you can't shake them. Not going to be the case with me. One more item here, and this is kind of exciting. We have some new swag at the Guitar Foster Parent. If you would like some of this stuff, it's absolutely free. If you'll just give me your mailing address, then I will send you this stuff. Here's what I have. I have some really cool decals that I had made that has the Guitar Foster Parent logo and a QR code. So this is not only a great way to promote the channel to your friends and family members if you'd like to, but it's a cool sticker. And in fact, if you wanted to, you could even cut this QR code off if you want to just have the decal. So I'd love to send you a few of these, and I also have some picks. Let's see if you can get this on the camera. The Guitar Foster Parent pick, and then on the back, another QR code, white with green. I'd love to send you some of these. Now look, I know that guitar players are picky about their picks. Did I really just say that? Picky about your picks. I did say that. So, this may be too thick for you. You might not like the material. But I know some people collect these, especially if you go to a lot of concerts. You may try to collect them or what have you. And I'd be honored if you would add these picks to your collection or play them. So I will send you a handful of these and a handful of these. If you will, send me your email address. Or your mailing address to my email address. Don't put your address down in the comments, of course. send me an email. Here's the address right here, john@guitarfosterparent.com. I will keep that private. I will take an envelope, stick some of this stuff in there, and mail it out to you. No harm, no foul, absolutely no obligation, no cost. Just my way of saying thanks for viewing, and if you would share it around as you have occasion. Not asking you to become an advocate or anything like that. But if you have somebody that you think might enjoy the content, this is a great way to get them linked up to what we do here. So thank you for that. I'll set this stuff aside. I've got plenty to go around, so just send me your mailing address to my email and I will get you taken care of. All right, sorry it's been so long since our last video together. I will confess to you that I was legitimately freaked out about doing this fret job. Let me review, if you're new, what this guitar's frets look like. Here's a little short cell phone video I took that has some pretty good pictures of some of the grooving I'm talking about. And if you can see here, these grooves are going to be a problem, especially when bending strings, but also just when fretting chords, when putting chord shapes on the fretboard. These can cause noise. Buzziness also gives it a rough feel. It's not good. A guitar is best when it's got buttery smooth frets. So I thought, well, gosh, I've never done this before, and there's so many ways to mess it up, and maybe we'll just put some strings on. But then I thought, no, because if this guitar ends up in somebody's hands, they're like going, ooh, these frets are not good, and I'm just gonna set it aside, and then I've wasted the purpose of So I thought, when I got there in my brain, we're doing it. That took a few days, and then it took the rest of the time I've been waiting to learn what to do. Never been down this road before. I've polished frets before, but that's mostly cosmetic, not totally. You get grime from your fingers, salt from sweat will corrode metal, and all these frets are made of is wire. I mean, it's just a special kind of metal wire. So obviously there's corrosion, gives them a dull look. So polishing, you just put a little polish on there, and you rub it with a polishing cloth until it's shiny and buff it off and done. I did that to the OG bass because those frets were in great shape. These, not so much. So I'm like, how do I get them smooth again so that I can get to the polishing stage? All right, so here's what I've learned and that I'm now going to pass on to you. Let's first of all talk about an overview of the steps we're going to be taking today as we tackle this. I feel like I'm about to sneeze. Time out. All right, game on. I did sneeze, but I wanted to spare you that. Okay, steps. Here we go. The first thing we want to do, because remember, when we're going to be removing grooves, there's only one way to do that. We're going to be removing metal from the frets, right? We're going to sand these down to the point where they're perfectly smooth or almost perfectly smooth. And we're going to find out today how close we can get to that. But anyway, that's the idea. But before we begin sanding this, we have to be careful, don't we? The neck has to be straight because, again, if this has a bow in it, which a lot of guitars do, or if it has a hump in it, then when I put a flat sanding surface on here, these aren't going to sand evenly, and we're going to have a real problem ever getting this guitar to play like it should play. By the way, holding this guitar like this reminds me, this guitar is so lightweight. It reminds me of like a Gibson SG, very lightweight, this is a great guitar for someone with not a lot of strength, just very lightweight. I don't know what it weighs. I may weigh it on a future episode in case anybody cares, but it's a very light guitar. So anyway, neck straightness. We're going to have to address that first and make adjustments if necessary, because if we start sanding frets on a neck that's not flat and straight, we're going to mess it up big time. That's the first thing. Second thing is, of course, we have to protect this wood with some tape, because we're going to be using abrasives, and so we're going to have metal dust, and metal is harder than wood, and so it's going to damage our fretboard that we just cleaned and oiled. So we'll be protecting this with masking tape. That's pretty simple to do, but very important. And then we're going to need some tools, some special tools. And mainly what we're going to be needing, aside from our masking tape that I just mentioned, is we're going to be needing a straight edge. And I'm talking a straight edge. This is a metal office ruler. And it is, I actually did check its straightness with a level. It is a straight ruler. So that we can check the neck straightness. We're going to eyeball it, but we're also going to check it with this to make sure that we're not taking too much off of some frets and not enough off of others. So this is a tool. You probably have one of these. I would recommend the metal ones because wood warps. So that's a good thing to have. Or a level. I have a level, but it's not really long enough to be useful, so I'm going to use that. Also, you need a perfectly flat sanding block. I had this in the garage that I've used to sand drywall with. But it is a flat surface. Again, it's perfectly flat. And so it also has this kind of cushion on it, which will kind of give us, I think, a nice polishing surface to use. But I've seen people use blocks of wood, but I'm like, ugh, wood is not necessarily always straight. I mean, if you've got like a furniture grade piece of wood that you've checked and checked and checked against something like this, then that might work, but I'm much more comfortable with something like this that I know is flat. So anyway, but you can use a piece of wood, just make darn sure it's flat. And then we're going to need some very, very, very fine grit sandpaper to put on this. How fine? Well, we're going to need several iterations. Okay, now you know in sandpaper grit numbers, the higher the number, the finer the grit. Okay, so like 100 grit is pretty coarse. 2000 grit, which we're going to be using today, is, it doesn't even feel like sandpaper. It just feels like kind of a sticky surface, like a polishing cloth, because that's what polishing is. We're going to dive deeper into that later. So I have before me 5 different grits of sandpaper, okay? And here they are: 800, 1000, and then 1200, 1500, and 2000, okay? And so what we're going to do is we're going to start with the 800, which is going to remove much more material than the 2000, and we're going to work our way meticulously through each grit to be very careful, because remember, you can always take more off, but you can't put it back on. So if you go too far, then you're talking a full fret job, which I really would prefer not to have to do, and I don't think I will. These frets are not terrible. If they were grooved super deep, then, but I think really this is going to work fine. We're going to find out today. And then you need one more tool, because once you flatten these, when we sand this down and get to where the grooves are gone or mostly gone, now we have flat frets. Frets have to be crowned at the top. If they're flat and you push a string on them, that's not good. You need to have at least some kind of crown so that the string length terminates at that point cleanly and precisely. For that, we need what's called a fret file. This is a specialty tool. This is not, you can't use a wood file or something in your garage. You've got to have a fret file. This is one example. This is called the dagger. These are available. There's other styles of fret files. One thing they all have in common is they're not cheap. But they're precision instruments. So, that's okay. This file, if you can see, is from Fret Guru, but the file part is in here, and if you can look, you'll see that inside, I don't know if you can see that or not. Well, here's a close-up shot of it. See this groove in here? All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to be using the file this way, and what this file shape does is it's machined to put the proper crown on the top of the fret, so that it will give you that good positive termination of string length when you fret a note. This particular one has 2 sides to it. It's got an extra large and a medium large. The extra large is likely for a bass. We'll be using the medium large, and I'm sure that there are more precision ones than this. The pros will probably have a collection of these files that they will, and they may do a different one for a Les Paul versus a Strat versus a Tele versus, who knows. For our purposes, this guy is what we're going to use. We'll use the medium large size, which has a 6105 number. I'm not entirely sure what that means. If you know, I would love to know. If you'll comment, let me know. So anyway, this is the file we're going to use. I had to buy this. This was not cheap, but it's a precision tool. And again, it seems to be. I mean, I think it'll last long time. I think it has diamond. I think the reason these aren't cheap is because they have diamond dust in them, so it's harder than the metal and you get a good result. So that's cool. Diamond file. We'll pay for that. So that's the process. The third thing you need is lots of patience. Okay. This is going to take time. We don't want to rush this. And I've told myself, don't rush this, don't rush this, don't rush this. So in the video, of course, there'll be gaps of work here. And I'll tell you at the end how long the process actually took. You won't see all of it. You'll see some of it and fast forward. But lots of patience, lots of patience. We're going to sand and measure, sand and measure, sand and check, sand and measure, sand and measure, sand and check. All those steps to make sure we're getting this nice and even as we go so that we get a good result. Because we can't put material back without refretting the guitar. And you know what, look, if we have to do that, we'll do that. But I'd prefer not to have to do that on this instrument because again, these frets are fine, they're just a little bit grooved. Okay, makes sense? Before we start the actual work, I want to talk a little bit about polishing. And I think I knew this, but I don't think I ever really thought about it before. But you're removing matter, you're removing material as you polish. This is why, like on a car, and I have had experience with this, if you buy polishing compound from your auto parts house and you're going to try to polish out some scratches on a car, it will tell you in no uncertain terms, be very careful because this is an abrasive. And while it may not feel all that abrasive to touch, it is taking paint off of the car. That's how it works. And then hopefully you can put wax on and buff it out and it'll look good. But it warns you about pressing too hard or getting in a rush because polishing removes matter. And so we're going to be careful about that. And really, you know, if you feel this is the 2000 grit sandpaper. You know, if you've ever felt like a jewelry polishing cloth, that you know, one of these cloths or like a silver polishing cloth where it's just a cloth and they say you don't need to put anything on it, you just use the cloth. It's really this. It's an abrasive. And then this, you know, this again, that doesn't look like sandpaper, does it? I mean, it's such a fine grit. But this is the finest one we're going to use that will actually polish these frets. Okay, so first step is we're going to check the neck straightness. How many times have you been at your local guitar store and seen people, when they're shopping for used guitars, do one of these? The first thing a dealer will do when you're like, yeah, you want to buy my guitar? I'm going to upgrade. I'm going to, you want to trade my guitar in. First thing they're going to do is they're going to take it and do this. Pawn shops do this too. And, they're looking down there and they're eyeballing it to see what? To see if the neck, mainly what they're looking for is if the neck is twisted, okay? If a neck is twisted, there's not a heck of a lot you can do to fix it. A lot of extremely cheap guitars have twisted necks because the wood has warped, it's gotten wet, or it's just a bad piece of wood to begin with. It's cheap and it's twisted. We've all seen cheap wood out in the weather get warped and twisted. Well, guitars will do the same thing if they don't use a quality piece of wood to make the neck. So they're looking for that. If there's a bow in it, or a hump, that is fixable if the guitar has an adjustable truss rod. There's a rod that runs through the middle of this neck that can, when you put tension on it, can actually put a bow in it or can release the bow in it, which, you will adjust to get the action that you want on the guitar and make sure that the strings are an even distance from each fret all the way down. And we'll do that when we get to that, maybe next episode. But that's what they'll do. They'll eyeball it. We have eyeballed this one, and it looks good to me. But I don't have the best eyes in the world, and so I'm going to take my straight edge. And here's all I'm going to do. I'm going to stand this. You can't see the top of it in the camera, but I'm doing this all the way up. I'm going to take carefully, because this is metal on metal, I'm going to take my straight edge, and I'm going to lay it across the frets at the top. Okay? I'm going to start at the top. And I'm just going to lay it on there and make sure it's making even contact with all the frets. So I'm going to look through. If I see daylight in between the ruler and some of the frets, I know those frets are lower. which means the neck may not be straight. But as I make my way up, looking all the way up, and there's the last one. Oh, hot dog. It looks like it's perfectly straight. Now I'm going to do it in the center. So right over where the inlay markers are. Same process. And again, I've already done this. So you might say, well, you're not being very precise. I've already done this off camera. But I'm just kind of showing you what I did. And I looked for every fret. I inspected to see, is there light in there, or is the ruler hopping? Like, is it, as I move it up, is it jumping out, you know, like it's bumping in? And I mean, it's just as smooth as can be. And then finally, I did the same thing on the bottom. And did that on all three. The good news is, the neck on this guitar is, I'm going to call it laser straight. Now, I didn't use a laser, but I'm going to say it's straight. If it wasn't, for example, say I'm running my straight edge up, and say I saw daylight in the center. So I'm going along, it's like, uh-oh, you know, maybe that means the neck is bowed this way, and we can use the truss rod, which on this guitar is up here. Some of them are down here. But whichever the case, you can adjust the truss rod to get it straight, okay? That's kind of beyond the scope of this video. If you need to do that, there are videos on YouTube everywhere to talk about how to do that. Again, as with most of these things, less is more. You want to go and take your time. You don't want to sit there and go cranking on this thing because you can actually crack the neck, you can damage it. So you just go a little at a time, little at a time, little at a time. But this neck is straight. We have confirmed that. But I wanted to kind of show you the process I went through to confirm that. So that was step one. Step two, protect the fretboard wood with trusty dusty masking tape. Let's do that now. I want to show you the best way to be precise with this. What I like to do is take my piece of tape and angle it in. So let's do this one for an example. Angle it in so that you get it as close to the fret as you can. And that helps you not have gaps where some of that material can get into the wood. And we need to do both sides. We're not going to be sanding down around the nut, so. But you know what? Let's do that anyway. So eventually you're going to get to frets that are narrower than the tape. So you just tear it into strips like this. One of the things I love about masking tape is it's so easy to work with. So you're going to get that kind of a thing. So once again, we'll take a strip of tape, tear it down the center, and just use the factory edge against the fret, like so. This is a part of the process which is not terribly fun, all right? But I've discovered, just like a lot of things in life, the times when I make the biggest errors that end up costing me the most time and money and shame to correct are times in my life when I just got in a hurry. And I was watching a baseball game the other night, saw a terrible error. I'm not going to say who did it. But I remember thinking, they got in a hurry. So a lot of times, you know, taking your time and you know, being careful is a mark of professionalism. You know, in this day and age, we walk around with our hair on fire, and people expect you to work fast and all of that. I don't necessarily think. Sometimes you can't help it. If your boss says you have to do it, then you have to do it. But to me, there's a joy. Maybe that's why we have hobbies, All right. What do you think about that? I think it gives the guitar kind of a cool look. Looks like he's ready to play the blues. Oh, it's so terrible. All right, so we've got now our guitar wood here on the fretboard is protected by this masking tape. And now we're ready to begin our sanding process. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to move the rest way down here to the end. And the good thing about this soft rest is you can kind of stick the headstock, because I want all this to be exposed up, because I want to be able to, and again, there's no sandpaper on here yet. I want to be able to, this is the idea, this is what we're going to be doing here. Not hitting the nut like I just did. Again, no sandpaper. But even pressure, and again, I'm not going to be pressing down on this, which is never good to do on a guitar neck. I'm just going to kind of let the tool do the work, and I'm going to be rocking the sandpaper back and forth across. Just enough, just really the pressure of me holding the block with my thumb and forefinger is going to be all I'm going to be applying. And I'm going to be moving it up and down like this, back and forth. So, let's apply sandpaper. Now I mentioned we're going to start with the most aggressive grit, which is 800. So this is an 800 grit. You can see the sparklies. This feels like fine grit sandpaper. The problem that I have, and I noticed this before we came to camera, this thing's designed where you loosen these and you tuck the paper in. Well, these sandpaper sheets that I got are not big enough to do that. So how am I going to keep this on the sanding block? Good question. I have an idea. What I'm going to do is I'm going to apply some, probably like a duct tape or the heavy tape, just to the edge of here, and then attach the tape to here so that it holds this flat. So I'll be right back. I'm going to rig this up where it will stay on here, and then we'll get to sanding. So I've now rigged up my block. You see I had to use a little bit of tape here to hold this on. And again, we're not going to be pressing very hard. Hopefully you will have a block that will fit. These sheets are just a little too short for this block, but I really like this block. I wanted to keep it. So here we go. This is the idea. We'll be, again, taking our time and being careful, checking, make sure our positioning is good. Turn this bag a little bit so that we can get everything nice and high. And we're just going to be very gently working our way down the fretboard, even number of strokes for each fret. Not doing anything aggressively. And then we're going to stop and have a look. And I can see where we are beginning to take off some metal from these frets. So what I want to do is do a couple of passes with this, and then I'm going to switch to a smaller grain, because again, I don't want to get too aggressive with this coarser sandpaper. Oh, see, I can already tell. What this is really doing is it's taking the crown off the fret. And not to worry, because when we're done, we're going to take this file and apply the crown back to the fret. But this is really working well. I think a couple more passes and I'm going to be ready to switch to a smaller. But I don't know if you can see the metal grit on my fingers. This is working. Okay, I definitely think it's time to switch to a finer grit now, because as I'm working my way, I can really tell that these have flattened out some, you know, and you can just go by feel. You know, I mean, there's still some grooves in there, but I think when we switch to our finer grit and we polish this down some, it's really going to kind of smooth it out. So let's change our sandpaper now. I'm going to switch to a 1200 now. I think we're going to skip the 1000, go to a 1200. So there we go. We got it mounted on there. Now let's give her a go with the 1200 grit. Same procedure. All right. Oh yeah. Now see, now I can see the grooves, but they're much narrower. I'm very happy with how this is turning out. I think by the time we get these polished up and grooved, or crowned rather, I think we're going to get a good result. Let's give it a little more. I don't know if you can tell. Let me tilt this a little bit so the light. See how these are shining up? What we're really doing at this point with this finer grit paper is we're really polishing now. There's a fine line between sanding and polishing, and I think we're kind of approaching that because you can see these are starting to luster up pretty nicely. I think I'm ready to change now to the 2000 grit paper. This is actually going quicker and easier than I thought, but you can see on this paper, very little material is being removed. Very little, which is good. That's what we want. So I'm going to remove this one and we're going to install a 2000 grit sheet now. All right, we've got our 2000 grit sheet on, and now same thing. Yeah, now you can see these are really starting to shine up because we're polishing at this point with this very fine 2000 grit. But now I'm very happy with how these are turning out. Okay, I think we're done sanding. And so now what we've noticed is that these frets are very flat on the top. I'm going to tangle up in my mic cord here. They're very flat on the top. And we need them to be, you know, as we talked about, they need to be crowned on the top. This special file is now going to come in handy because it is machined, precision machined, to give the frets what they need. So we're going to again use the smaller of the two grooves. This one is probably best suited for a base. We're going to use this one. And this file, we're just going to place it on the fret and just give it a and it will shape the fret how it needs to be. I've been told that the best way to know when you're done is when you first put it on there, you're going to feel some resistance. But then you won't feel that resistance anymore. It'll slide a little more easily, and that's how you know you're done filing. Also, you want to make sure that you are filing as perpendicular to the fretboard as possible. So since we're kind of on an angle, I'm making sure to try to keep this angle here at 90 degrees. Yeah, I see what they're saying. You can definitely feel the crowning action happening. Now, as I'm doing this, I'm extremely nervous, if you can't tell. I want to say, just in the interest of, I guess, common sense, or I don't know, maybe that's not the right word. I would not recommend trying this yourself if you've got a, if you've got a $5,000 Les Paul, or something that, you've played the heck out of and it needs some love. Yeah, that one I really felt it. There are professionals that have equipment that, you know, you should probably invest in paying them. I am not that guy. I'm just learning. I'm tinkering. I like to try to fix things and learn to do things, and that's part of the adventure. Boy, you can really tell with this file, it does the work for you. I mean, like this one, you know, when I'm on here, it pretty much is done, because these rails on the side, the abrasive is only in the groove. They're just riding on the top, and the file's like, I'm done, no more to do. But I put it on this one I haven't done yet. It's working. You can feel it working. By the way, the squeaking, the dog is playing. He's bored out of his mind with this episode. Yeah, see, I can feel it. It's getting a little lighter, and now it's slick. And that tells me that it's done. So this part I was really nervous about. How do I know when it's done? How do I know? And really, as it turns out, the way this little guy is designed, maybe that's why these are so expensive in addition to the diamond dust, it really is giving me feedback in my hand. Yeah, see, now it's starting to get slippery, and now it's not taking anything off anymore. That tells me it's done. Yeah, and see, as I'm looking at these, I can see that they have crowns on them, which is cool. Here we go. All right. Now, I'm just going to kind of do this. I'm curious how much dust is on here. Oh yeah, quite a bit. So that's metal that we've removed. Now, a couple things I want to note. There's still some grooves, all right? But I will tell you that when I run my fingernail over them, it really kind of glides. I really think these frets are going to be okay. I own guitars that are grooved worse than this, and I feel like that they play just fine. One thing I want to note is that the frets, when you crown them, you're not making a point. There's a very small flat edge, like a little plateau that's sloped. It's not totally flat, but this file, and you know, if you look at it, you can kind of see the idea. But I don't know if you probably can't see that in the camera, and I apologize for that. But it makes sense now that I've used it, and that these are shiny. You can kind of see how they look in the light. All right, so I just got a shop towel here, and the cool thing is, since the wood's protected, I can really give this a good kind of rubbing here. And I think those look pretty good. Well, that's quite enough of that. Lots of sanding and, you know, repetitive motion, but we've got these frets, and so I'm going to turn this guitar around. The tape is still on. I'm going to remove it, but, you know, I don't need to show you how to do that. Again, what was that school that has the blue turf on its football field? Boise State. Got kind of a Boise State look going here. With the blue tape. But I'm going to kind of tilt this back and forth in the light, and you see how they look pretty good. They're not perfect, all right? This is not a fret job. What I've done is and I said before, these grooves are still going to be there, but the idea is to smooth them out where they're not going to really interfere with the player. And I think we've accomplished that. The frets are shiny. I can definitely see the work of the file. They've got a nice crown that, you know, looks like any fret I've ever seen on a new instrument, so I think it's right. I think it looks good. So we're going to remove the tape, and next time on the Guitar Foster Parent, we're going to, gosh, we're getting close, aren't we? Next time, we're going to do some final cleaning. We haven't fastened the pick guard back on yet, just one screw to hold it together, because I knew I was going to remove it and do some cleaning. We'll clean in there, we'll get our Q-tips out, and we'll do a nice detail around the pickups. My wife was in here the other day looking it over. She goes, hey, it's not very clean around here. I know, dear, I haven't done that yet, but we will. Then we're going to, got our ground wire here that's all prepped and ready to go. We're going to reinstall the tailpiece and the bridge, get it grounded, get everything. We will do a quick check to make sure that everything's connected up well. We'll shine up the pig guard, give the body a good cleaning. We'll have the tape, of course, will be off by then. And then it'll be time to put strings on, and we'll talk about setup. So basically what's going to happen is, remember, we've put a new nut on the guitar that has not been grooved yet. So as we set the guitar up, now that we're done with our frets, we can then work on using special files, and I'll show those to you next time, and begin to groove out this bone nut that's new and get the grooves the right depth so that our string action is where we want it. And of course, we can make adjustments down here on the bridge as well. This particular guitar only has one adjustment for the whole bridge. It's not like individual saddles. So not as precise, but we should be able to get it in a very complimentary and comfortable position. And so we will be putting strings on this baby next time on the Guitar Foster Parent. We'll be putting them on, taking them off, putting them on, taking them off to test whether we have the guitar nut grooved out at the correct depth. And that's it for this episode of the Guitar Foster Parent. Whew! I can't tell you how nervous I was about putting a sandpaper and file to these frets. But you know what? It really wasn't that bad once you get started. You need the right tools. And again, just to review, I only used 3 different grits of the sandpaper. I started with the 800, which I think is probably the most aggressive grit that you want to ever use on frets. Although I'm not sure the world would end if you used a 600 or something, but 800, and then I skipped a level and went to the 1200, so I didn't use the 1000. The little pack I bought of sandpaper included all these grits. But just get you a variety pack of fine grit sandpaper. Here's the brand. It doesn't matter. I mean, I think this was fine paper. I would get it again. And again, this tape was only because my sanding block was too long for these short pieces of sandpaper. So you shouldn't have to do that. And then I went to the 2000, which is this fine one still on the block here, which is really just a polishing type feel to it. And I'm pretty happy with the results. And of course, you know, you got to invest in your tools. And so I got this Fret Guru. It's called the Dagger 2.0. This is the file that I used. And you know what? I have to say, it was easy to use, and it's got some heft to it. So it's well balanced. I think it's designed this way on purpose to give it a good feel in the hand. And it did a good job. I'm very, very pleased with these frets. They look good. I think they're going to play nice. So that's it for this edition of the Guitar Foster Parent. One more reminder of 2 things. Like, subscribe, and click the notification bell if you please. I would appreciate it. And the second most important thing is, thank you so much for joining us on the Guitar Foster Parent. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye now.